Hello and welcome back to ClaudioVisual with me, Claudia. Last week I interviewed local cultural ephemerist and sport expert Tom Adams, for any of you who watched it. And we discussed the artistic and visual cultural, obviously, dimensions of sport, and particularly cricket. So we discussed paintings of cricket and how these paintings might differ from, for example, paintings of football, etc. And we also discussed the spectacle itself of the match, test match cricket that is. But we also at one point touched upon the idea of the sportsman or sportsperson as a kind of harmonious entity, kind of along the lines of the Vitruvian Man, painted by Leonardo da Vinci. And this inspired me for today's podcast, basically. So I'm sure all of you are familiar with the Vitruvian Man. It's one of the most popular images created by Leonardo in 1490. But I actually, at the time, said quite tangentially, actually, that there's an image which precedes Leonardo's image, predates it, which is from the 12th century by a woman called Hildegard von Bingen. And she's a German abbess. So I thought that maybe today it might be interesting to follow on from this kind of discussion and talk about her works, because I personally find her inspiring. She is an incredible woman. So she lived from 1098 until 1179. Yes, she's German, as I mentioned. She's also known as Saint Hildegard because she's been canonized. So in various denominations of Christianity, she is considered a saint. She's also known as the Sibyl of the Rhine. So as I say, she's a polymath. She's a composer. Her musical works are absolutely phenomenal. You can look them up on YouTube or what have you. Really, really divine, yes. So she's a composer, she's a philosopher. She was she also developed a language called lingua ignota, which was used by her for kind of mystical purposes. So she's created a language, she's basically done all manner of things. She's a mystic, she created botanical texts, all manner of pursuits this woman had, really. And as I say, 12th century German mystic, polymath, composer. She had all kinds of assets going on. And she was also, quite notably, an abbess. So she's known as St. Hildegard OSB, Order of St. Benedict. So she was the abbess, i.e. the leader of an abbey, for the Order of St. Benedict. So that's a monastic order founded in the 6th century by, as you might expect, St. Benedict. You might be familiar with other types of orders such as the Dominicans or the Carmelites or what have you, but this was part of the Order of St. Benedict. And she particularly was also a visionary. So she had all these different types of vision. Some people have ascribed them to perhaps types of migraine, sort of epileptic kind of things, because she'd see a lot of flashing lights and what have you. I mean, who am I to say whether this is to do with her visions or whether it's to do with, you know, genuine sacred visions, whether it's holy enlightenment, whether it's to do with migraines and epilepsy or what have you. I'm not here to talk about that, but there are various ways you could interpret it, of course. But what I'm here to do, obviously, is to talk about the visual cultural aspects of Hildegard von Bingen. So let's have a look today at 3 separate images of hers, which she produced for her work Chivias, in which she describes in quite a lot of detail 26 separate visions that she had. Holy visions or what have you, and she produced 35 different illuminations for this work. There were quite a few manuscripts knocking about still. I think a couple got destroyed during World War II or what have you, because they were in Germany, and you know, these things happen. So the first one is an image of the Saint herself receiving one of the visions that she describes. So she's recounting the vision to Volmar, who's a monk, and he's taking down what's going on, but at the same time, she's actually receiving the vision concurrently. So she's describing what she's currently receiving into her mind from this vision. So actually it's quite strange because it looks rather like tongues of fire or something of the type, something like might have happened at was described to have happened at Pentecost by the Bible. So she's receiving this fiery entity into her brain while she's describing the vision. So the vision's coming in not just sort of via nothingness or via being stricken in her sleep or something. It's actually descending and holding onto her brain. So it looks a bit like Pentecost or something like that, but it also looks a bit like tentacles or something. It's almost a bit The Thing, or a bit, Alien versus Predator or something. It's almost something quite disturbing about it. It's almost sucking itself into her mind, engulfing her head. The architectural dimension's quite curious as well. So you've got this frame around the outside. It's almost quite harmonious, actually, in a sense, as we were discussing earlier with regard to Vitruvian Man. I mean, this is a lot earlier, so you can't imagine much perspective. I mean, the footstool, it doesn't exactly look the most realistic of things. But so she's just sort of depicting herself there, looking quite enraptured almost. So as I say, she's a polymath, but she's a visionary, and this is how she's decided to depict herself, which I think is quite curious, really. There are some other images of hers from the same manuscript. So you've got choirs of angels. Before I come on to her proto Vitruvian Man, so you've got choirs of angels here. So if anyone's read sort of Pseudo-Dionysius or anything like that, it'll be familiar with sort of the ideas of like a celestial hierarchy and such. So you've got a few different varieties of angel here. So you've got sort of seraphim, cherubim, thrones, dominions, etc. It's all based on a hierarchy of angelic entities. Obviously they're depicted as sort of humanoid, but really angels within Christian tradition, of course, might have appeared traditionally as human, but are actually pure, unembodied mind. So, if you read someone like C.S. Lewis or what have you, you'll be a bit more enlightened as this sort of idea that was just traditional in Christianity, that angels aren't human, they're just a mind, basically. But she's had to obviously depict them as humanoid figures. So you've got a few interesting things here, and she essentially loves her geometry and concentric circles. And a lot of this is based on the visions that she used to have. So you can imagine perhaps it might have been some kind of issue to do with migraine, or it might have been whatever. I mean, as I say, but whatever she was experiencing, whatever it was clearly very geometric and absolutely concentric circles. If you look up any of her work, her visual work, it's very much grounded in this idea of kind of, widening, sort of different layers, sort of, concentric circles, basically, in geometric patterns. So if you have a look in the middle, there's very much a geometric pattern going on, but also mixed with this idea of an embodied angel, or what have you. So this is also another image of hers. And just briefly to conclude, this is really just a snapshot of Hildegard, really. I just wanted to bring her to light because she's incredible. Really an inspiring kind of historical figure who's maybe just doesn't get enough attention. So the final image we'll have a quick look at is the one that I mentioned in the beginning, which was the one that inspired me to sort of talk about her a little bit today, is her universal man. So you've got a man within, yet again, sort of concentric circles. She loves that kind of thing. She's actually depicted herself in a really cute fashion, sort of at the bottom, at her desk, kind of witnessing the vision. And you've got a man within all these lines and symbols. So you've got, so essentially, the idea here is of man or woman or what have you, human, as a microcosm of the greater cosmos. So all the balance and order that there is in the cosmos is being kind of embodied in any human being. And I think possibly she intends also a Christian one particularly. And so you've got this entire red outline, this creature, what's depicted as a creature, which is kind of the embodiment of the cosmos itself, you know, the planets, the entire balance of everything, really. And then you've got God the Father, it would appear to be, at least, at the very top. And he's actually part of the frame. So you've essentially got God the Father framing everything, the cosmos, the galaxy, what have you, however it might have been termed by her. And then you've got man within the middle, kind of as an embodiment, a kind of personification of the entirety of the universe. So she's done a really interesting thing then, obviously with herself in the corner. As I say, this is from the Shivyas, one of her major works. But yeah, so as well as being a visionary, however, let's just recapitulate. She was also a polymath, a composer. She was all manner of things, really, and I think it's just been interesting to highlight her artworks, because that's what I'm trying to do in this podcast, really, is to bring to light a bit more interesting, not necessarily more interesting, but a bit more obscure artwork and culture, and also interrogate aspects of culture which wouldn't necessarily be considered artistic or what have you, but which can absolutely be interrogated in this fashion, as I did last week with the cricket-orientated one. So anyway, this has just been a short one today, bringing to light Hildegard von Bingen. So thank you for watching. Bye.